Welcome to my little presentation that I'm going to be doing here. Just as an introduction, my name is Sylvia Lahoma. I work for Sefer Publishing Group as their Spanish translator, and I work with a team who's currently translating the Et Sefer into Spanish. My views that I'm sharing in here and may share in some of my other videos and things like that are not necessarily that of Sefer Publishing Group, just want to make that clear. But these are my own personal findings and views. What I'm going to present today is something that I think Baruch, second Baruch, there's a verse in there that I think really kind of encompasses the importance to me of this topic. So in 2 Baruch chapter 42 verse 6 we find, "And time shall succeed to time, and season to season, and one shall receive from another, and then with a view to the consummation shall everything be compared according to the measure of the times and the hours of the seasons." So in this, I feel like we can find the importance of understanding his time, season, days, and years for defining appointed days, and discerning the goings on in the Shamayim, in the heavenlies. It's very important to know his defined dedications to each day, because this amplifies the meanings of the set apart and appointed days. So the groundwork of these cycles, this way of looking at the calendar, of which I'm going to present here today, is something that I don't think I've ever seen. I've never seen another calendar quite like it before, or that's set up in this way. This is, I know a few other people who have found the right beginning point and have set their Sabbath day correctly. Me and those people are on the same Sabbath day. But as far as it being set up this way, I've never seen anyone else do this. But to begin, we have to define the first day. I'm just going to do a short introduction, because really defining this first day is like I want to define, this is like a key. The calendar is a key, and in this key there are certain latches and definition points that you need to carve into, and if you have those right definition points, then the key will unlock the door that you're wanting to look into, to look deeper into. So there are certain points, there are certain cuttings into this calendar that are like that key that help to unlock it and reveal the whole picture. So one of those points is its beginning day. In Yucatan, there's a pyramid that's known as the Chichulu pyramid, and this pyramid marks the entrance of the spring solstice, the Aviv, the new barley, the new grain. How it does this is by a window, and as you look through that window, you can see the sun begin to enter into that window at even time, at both sunset and sunrise. And you'll see the sun begin to enter into this, into the middle of the day, and then it will, the next day, the sun will enter fully into this window, and then the next day after that, you'll also see a portion of it enter. So that defines for us really clearly which 3 days are our window day. And so because I was placed in this area, I got to see this for 3 years in a row, and got to go and actually physically witness the turning of the season through this window, through this pyramid, and how it marks and how this window works. That Enoch talks about these window days that begin and finish your cycle. So these 3 days are very important in defining how to begin your day. So that first day of the year would be the one where the last day of the cycle, where your sun is entered into not exactly center, but it's the first day of having a slightly longer period. So for this year, it's actually has 4 different cycle days, 4 years different. So one day, that's why our Roman calendars move on a 4-day cycle or 4-year cycle to keep them in track. But this also, you must follow that 3-day, 4-day window, 4-year window as well in moving your days along here. So for this year, for this set, we have our first day of the year being on March the 20th, and our last day of this year will be on, sorry, my calendar's going, will be on March the 19th. Okay, so on March 20th was our first day of this year, and then of 2018, and we started our count. Now, I can go into later on another video. I can go deeper if you guys want me to into how this first day is developed and picked, but for now and for time reasons, we're just going to go forward with this as our set day, as I know it is. So our first day is the March the 20th. We begin, and that would be called Nisan 1 or day 1. First, I'm going to just define also how this is, though I have it set in these pictures, that I have it set in a graph format. But you can easily transfer this into a circle format, which is the comprehension I had when drawing this and making this was in a circle format. I just set it in a graph format so it's easy to read. It's easy. You can see the 7-day cycles. You can see the lining up of everything in this way. So in setting this up, your first day, like a circle, your first day and your last day of that specific cycle are one, or your last day and your first day, rather, are one day. So each cycle is a full circle, and as their circle comes together, that meeting point is the point where your first day and your next day of that point will begin and end. So day of the first initial counting, this is a 22-day count, and it kind of prefaces your year. It starts your 22 days, or it starts your year with a 22-day count, where you start at day 1 as Aleph, and then count through the Aleph Bet, Gimel, Dalet, Hey, Vav, Zayin, Chet, Tet, Yud, Kuf, Lamed, Mem, Nun, Samek, Ayin, Pei, Tzadi, Kuf, Resh, Shin, Tav. So each day has a letter, and we have 22 days. So beginning at day 1, March 20th, we count 22 days, and we get to April 10th. On April the 10th is the last day of the set apart. So in order to kind of just show how this how this final day and first day combine, our next cycle, beginning day 1 of the count of the Omer, is a 50-day count, which will count from there on out in 50-day cycles. So our 22nd day and our first day are 1, and then from here on out, for the rest of the cycles, our 50th day and our first day are 1. And again, that's another little cutout. This is another little latch that you must have in order to reach this completion, because otherwise you'll be too many days out or not enough days in if you don't have all of these latches, all of these cuttings and definitions in how to count this. So just to really quickly, we have in this initial 22-day count, we have the Pesach, the first festivals all encompassed in this 22 days, and it marks the beginning of the year, and then sets this 22 days apart than what is encompassed in the rest of the cycles. So to start the year cycle, next, as per scripture, we start a 50-day count, which is called the Omer. Since the Feast of First Fruits falls on the last day of the first cycle, it is also considered the first day of the Omer count. So we have an Aleph, and I want to point out we also have Aleph and Tav here because, and this is the only one that it shows up Aleph and Tav. So this is the only feast day that falls in such a way as to reveal the Aleph Tav as one, and it's the only one that ever does this. This feast day is the first fruits, and it explains the significance of Yahusha's ascension being on this specific day, as he himself and Yachanan the Immerser proclaimed him to be the Debar, the Word, in Yachanan 1, and the Aleph Tav as one as well. So this helps make him visible more so, and it completes the middle branch of the Zayin, the 7-branch menorah, which we'll get into a little bit later. So if we continue our 50-day cycles as instructed by Torah, to begin in this way, we can view the clear significance of the letter Vav here also, as Shavuot appears on this day and falls on this day, equating to the completion of the first cycle, the first cycle of 50, combined as one with the Aleph in each cycle for the rest of the year. So for the rest of the year, it will be the first and last day is the Aleph and the Vav day. So we mark Shavuot, the Aleph and Vav day, and separate that apart. So the year contains 7 full cycles of 50 days each, with a 22-day beginning and set-apart cycle, which relates to the 8th and the first days found in Pesach and Sukkot, as well as the first and 8th day found mentioned many times in Scripture regarding creation and the culmination of the times before his final coming in the return of our Mashiach Yahusha. As many might be able to see already, here we can also find our middle branch cycle, which is the 4th cycle of 50s, in which, yes, we encounter all of the fall feasts. Here we can see a clear distinction and confirmation that these are assuredly his prescribed times, of which the forefathers kept, Abraham, Yitzhak, and Yaakov. Most likely many more, up until the times when this was finally stamped out of memories in general and hidden from our sight. Though it is clearly written and affirmed to in the earth's own cycles, and that of all the heavenly bodies. According to this keeping of times and days, I need to explain very briefly a topic which is more deeply understood if you follow the links provided in the description box to Eric Bissel's Search for the Mishkan Pattern, and you'll find several hours of studies regarding this. So, to review, let's begin with the letter Vav, which is where we all first encountered the Vav man, the Mashiach, Yahusha ben Elohim, where we see him first and have accepted the connection to the truth of his Besarot, his gospel. It is here where we look upon his connection that he made by the power of Yod, the first letter of the Father's name, which signifies the power of his own right hand, his right arm, where the muscle and the strength is located. Then we find Hey. Look, in this letter, the Vav man is then revealed. And this is a quick snapshot of the beginning of Yod He Vav He, and to help you understand the significance of not only his name, but of Vav, where the Mishkan pattern begins. So Eric kind of explains the Mishkan pattern in this way. I'm just going to summarize really quickly. And this is a summary, so please take the time to go and study this out for yourself. It's much worth it. So if we come upon and we imagine in our minds that we are wandering in a forest, and we come upon this area, this place in the middle of nowhere, and we think to ourselves, what is this? What have I found? If you investigate this, you'll eventually encounter some sort of truth, and because the Vav has led you to this connection to the truth, and he is the Vav and the Zayin man, the 6th and the 7th letter, the Vav Zayin man, the declaration of the nail and the covenant made complete. It is at this point you'll be presented with a covenant. You'll see a fence around the place that you found. And the question will be asked to you, will you follow this Vav man, investigate this fence, where he is showing you and leads you, and will break you with? Or will you go your own way through this wilderness, through this forest? Will you look closer, or will you go back to the work in the world that you knew before? Life or death, it essentially boils down to this question. So, you find a fence, and if you choose life, he will show you his covenant Torah, which is this fence, where you'll find safety if you abide by these directions, understandings, teachings, these learnings. If you look at this fence, it is clearly established. It is fully guarded by the one standing in the center, and there's only one way in and one way out. It's his place, and within it you abide by his ways. The Chet is the 10th letter, and this is where we see the picture of the fence, and it is also the number 10, as Moshe is known for, and we hear many times. It relates to in Hebrew as the 10 words of the covenant of Yahweh, the 10 words of Moshe. So this fence is also representing and symbolizing here these 10 words that we live by, encompassed with love for Yah first and foremost, and with the love of those who reside within these boundaries. We have these 10 Devarim, these words. Those who are strangers at the gate, we welcome in to show clearly his great love for us and what this is, but also to instruct them clearly in his ways, his word, his Devarims, discipling them into the next step of this Mishkan pattern, which is Tet, which shows us the spinning wheel of the potter, or the creator, the molder's, or the physician's hand. It's a letter that encompasses what he creates and molds, and all the steps in this process, especially regarding that of the potter. This is where the molding of our newborn spiritual soul begins, and encounters the process of the aforementioned 10 words, of which there are 10 specific words that relate to this pattern. But, for time's sake, I'm not going to get into those right now. Returning, and next we see Yod, which is the third part of this beginning phase. It is the power of his right hand, and shows his strength and skill in being the one who molds and makes us this fence, and our own bodies, which keeps us within the borders and walking towards our shepherd in his leading through our lives. The next letter and encounter is that of the Kof and the Lamed, shown in the pattern as the barbecue grill, which is the altar sacrifice. This is where we begin to learn to resist the devil and burn the sacrifices of our flesh that we must cut out and pluck away, casting it here at the Vav man's feet. This is the place where our nakedness is revealed, and we must place it upon his sacrificial altar and allow it to be burned from us and forever gone to ashes. These things belong to the Lamed, the one who owns the shepherd's staff, the fishing hook, and the sickle that reaps the wheat. The owner of this staff, the Lamed, is present and displayed in the evenings, or Lila, the one who keeps his sheep through the darkness. He is our good shepherd. So as you enter these dark times of sacrifice, you have the comfort of the Lamed with you to sustain you throughout this walk, and specifically through this time and encounter. Some remain stuck here. They're unable to proceed and walk through the fiery coals and fire of the sacrificial moment that really allows the maker's mold to be finished, to be hardened and purified. So many just become stuck here, and the seed which was sown withers away without ever reaching the living waters. The Mem, which is the next encounter, the next letter in this pattern. Mem means literally waters, and is where we find the laver of mirrors, or the cleansing pool, where we see our own reflection his living and perfect, complete, and whole waters, and that reflection in that waters is him, our Mashiach, the one who has that shepherd's staff, and ourselves combined. Next in the pattern is the 7-branched menorah, the letter Samech, where we find his days and appointed times and the importance of Zayin, 7. Upon the Samech, we can see the picture of the Torah and the prophets and the covenant of Abraham. So for brevity, and as you can see, this does go much deeper than what I'm just skimming over here. The importance of these letters are what I want to clearly show. So continuing next, we encounter the table of showbread, the ayin, and the 16th letter of the Aleph Bet. Here's the measurement of being weighed in the scales and measured. Here's the encountering of the bread and our spiritual food, the body of Mashiach himself. Here's the letter that shows his view and his justice and righteous judgments that are always kept in the Shamayim and will soon be fully set forth in command at his coming to reign on this earth and in the Shamayim as he does now. Next in this pattern is paid and relates to the altar of incense of the purified Kadoshim, the place where our prayers are heard. They are received and answered directly. The pay is like the mouth and shows the breath in speaking forth. It represents the movement of cycles, and our personal walk is reflection and remembering that which he has done for you personally and as the corporate body of Yisrael throughout history. For this and for the grandeur of this remembrance is why it is so clearly necessary to dedicate each day to such an extent. Setting apart this very day is the moment of becoming one with him and understanding his conversation with you and between you and him. Then comes Sadeh, where we encounter the banner of our freedom, the Ark of the Covenant where the Torah's 10 words are kept, guarded, and sanctified. As the final letter of this pattern and establishing the borders is Kuf, the establishing and setting forth of his complete wholeness and perfection. If you find this interesting, and please, I would encourage you to go and look deeper. Like I said, follow the link below to Erectology and the Mishkan pattern. There is much more to discuss in this. So, you should be able to at least see now why these Mishkan pattern letters are so important and that they are truly set apart. This is another indicator that helps to solidify that this calendar is truly his perfect arrangement of the days. This is clearly established in the order of the appointed feast days and Shabbats and their corresponding letters. Beginning with the first feast of spring, we see that Pesach begins on the Shabbat noonday, and the first day of Matzot is Samek, which again signifies the importance of the 7-branch menorah, the covenant of Abraham, on which hangs the whole Torah and the prophets. This letter establishes and lights the way towards the path in this sense. Samek and noon is a whole nother topic, of which again to those who know or are in the know will immediately understand the importance seen here in the following feast days of the whole year. And this is where we begin, and how the year is dedicated at the first cycle of 22 days. In the Mishkan pattern, we see the first and last of letters in full, shown in spring. And then once we look into the opposite ones, which are in fall, they uniquely combine the whole pattern into one full set, that also fulfills the whole 2 parts in one, like in a reflection. So Pesach shows how the letters Nun, Samek, Ayin, Pei, Tzadi, Kuf, Resh, Shin, and Aleph Tav are related. To Pesach, and through the reflection of the letters, we see the layout of the beginning of the Mishkan pattern reflected in the fall feasts. So that beginning and ending and beginning are reflected in each, just like the menorah and the Samek and a mirror, and a reflection. In the fourth and middle branch of the 7 sets of 50 days is where we find all of the fall feasts, set out in perfect arrangement and order. If we begin with the fast day, in Jewish tradition known as Leil Salichot, we see that this falls on Zayin, the first of the Shabbats in this cycle, the 7th day. Because of the importance of having at least 4 days of prayers leading up to Yom Terumah, the Jews simply move this day around essentially. If 4 days does not fit in between Yom Terumah and this Shabbat prior, then they'll add days and move it to the Shabbat prior that. As you see here, every year and every cycle has 4 days in between the Sayin, the 7th day, and the proclamation of Yom Terumah, or Tishri 1, which this year begins on September the 15th. The 4 days of prayers are very significant and are the same days in order that the Feast of Sukkot will take, and also ends with the Kuf to Lamed day. Once again, clearly pointing to the 33rd day, the 8th day of Sukkot, as some refer to it, and this reveals the significance of Lag BaOmer, the fast day, which ascribes a great deal of importance to the 33rd day of the count of the Omer. The Kof, and Lamed letters, the altar of sacrifice, and the promise of our Good Shepherd and his good Debar, his word, which was from the beginning and still is established today and will be forever. His Torah, his instructions that are clearly defined as the covenant word ratified by his own sacrifice and raising of the Mishkan, his own tabernacle up again, Yahushua Mashiach. Then, between Yom Terumah and the next prescribed feast day, Yom Kaffarim, the Feast of Coverings, we see Mem first, the washing of living waters, and as Pesach prescribed to begin with, it is again Nun, Samik, Ayin, Pei, Tzadi, Kuf, Resh, Shin, and Tav. And on the day appointed that he will cover us is the Shabbat on which falls the letter Shin. The day of Kaffarim is the letter Shin, that letter of destruction, of fire and gnashing and sharp teeth. This letter shows the coming of the end, and the last letter, the Tav, when it is finished and completed. If you have entered this covering, this Kaffarim, then for the days in between Kaffarim and Sukkot are the letters beginning with Tav, then Aleph, the author, Bet, Home, and Gimel, which means to set your heel and make movement towards something. The door typically is where we walk towards, and is shown in the first day of Sukkot, the Dalet. Here we see the wedding feast completely portrayed, and links to not only Yahushua proclaiming himself as the door, the way, and the life, but also to the parable of the 10 virgins awaiting the wedding feast. And to those who knew he was at the door and were ready to enter in at the precise moment he would arrive, and have this door open, and then be closed before the remaining 5 would return from purchasing their own oil, rather than having made it and found the source really of the living oils that never run out, like the Mayim, the waters of life. The door reveals the Hay, which reveals the Vav, which marks then the 4th and middle branch day as being the Zayin, the 7th, the perfect Yahweh himself, as one with and who fulfilled Yah's Torah in Yahusha, our salvation, and the middle branch of which flows forth the living waters and oil that lights the fires of the Ruach, dwelling within those who are awakened and born anew, their souls reunited with their Maker in the Creator of all, Yahweh. Here he is in the Zayin, and then to the final half we see the culmination of the Het, the Tat, the Yod, as the final and 7th day of Sukkot, and Kuf, as the set-apart 8th day, and what some believe is the day of the culmination of the marriage in the Jewish traditional wedding feast, and which again is the 33rd day of this 50-day middle branch cycle, setting apart the 33rd day and setting apart this whole calendar. I pray that this short introduction, as I present this whole idea now, is out there. People can see it, and I'm done for now. If you would like to contact me, please send me an email at sylvia@sefer.net, sylvia@sefer.net, and feel free to get a hold of me. And discuss this, you can also leave comments below. And you can find us on Facebook for open communication and conversation at the page called Heavenly Conversations. So come out and find us, and I pray that you all be Baruch, blessed in Yahweh's name.